morning. Welcome. I'm Milchard with the Vancouver Web Festival. We are here today to talk about how to create and pitch branded content. Thank you so much for coming. We have a wonderful panel, and there will be some time to do some questions at the end. And if you have any questions about furthering on in the festival, feel free to ask me. Today we have a fantastic panel. We have Rachel David, who's going to be moderating today. We have Tyler Funk. We have Ben Strang. We have Stewart Reynolds. And we have Matt Clarke and David Milchard.
I didn't know. Yeah, I didn't know.
Milchard?
Milchard.
Okay. And they're from Cocomilk Productions, and we have Nick Carreras as well with us here. And I just want to make a few announcements. So after the festival today, we do have our awards ceremony tonight, which is here in this theater, so please come back at 6 p.m. You can also follow all of our endeavors on social media using the hashtag VFW18, so make sure you check that out and follow us along on social media. I would also like to remind you to check out the silent auction today as well. We've got some great prizes that you would not be able to get anywhere else, and everyone likes an exclusive prize, an exclusive thing. So please do that. And I'd like to now introduce you to Rachel David. Rachel David is the CEO and founder of Hashtag Communications, a company that helps brands create and execute their influencer marketing campaigns. She also hosts a weekly video podcast called Raking It In with Rachel David. I really like that. It's clever. Where she interviews creators about their different revenue streams and gives viewers tips on how to strategically make money online. Please welcome Rachel David and the rest of the panel to this panel today.
Thank you, and thank you for having me. So when I was told I was going to be moderating this panel, and I looked at who was on it, I was like, whoa, these are a lot of different worlds, and they're not all in the same world. So I think first and foremost, it would be important to explain who you are and what you do, because you all create and pitch branded content in a different way. So let's start, Jeremy.
How you guys doing? I'm Ben Strang. I'm a writer-director in the narrative scripted space, and I also have a branded content studio in Los Angeles. We primarily do longer form commercials, basically, like 3 to 4 minute commercials that run on Facebook and YouTube primarily. And most of that stuff is built like small short films, so they're meant to stand alone as opposed to like a pre-roll advertisement.
Hi, my name's David Milchard, not Milchard. For anyone Canadian, they'll know who that guy is. That's my producing partner, Matt Clarke. Matt, let's jump in together here on this. But basically, we write scripted linear content. Yeah. We work with people like Nick, who he'll introduce himself in a moment. But what he does to help us find brands to help pay for that.
Yeah, we make usually comedy, scripted stuff, and we kind of do branded content, usually integrations and sponsorships within the kind of scripted comedy stuff that we are doing.
Nick?
Thank you, David.
I should have 2. Take 2.
You deserve it, you're worth it.
Appreciate it. I'm Nick Carreras. I run talent and talent strategy at a digital network called Ben Pixels. I did the same, running talent strategy, top talent commercial at Maker Studios for 4 years before this, which is what I did first with Matt and David on condos with my 2-year-old. And yeah, on the talent strategy side, I work with a lot of talent that are in my network on finding brands to integrate with them, to create branded content, to come in for one-offs, or to come in as a sponsor for a show. Do a lot of other stuff too, but I think that gives you the gist.
Hey guys, my name is Tyler Funk. I run a production company called North of Now. We do digital and broadcast ads. We've done stuff for Coca-Cola, Budweiser, Band-Aid, That's what we do on the branded front. We do a lot through the crowdsourcing world. So we're the third largest producer on Tongle and like up there on NoFilm and all those other sites. So they're great entry places to get in as filmmakers. And then we also do web series. Yeah, that's kind of what we do.
My name's Stewart Reynolds, and I'm better known online as Brittlestar, and I've been making comedic videos starting on Vine and then going all the way through now doing Facebook and YouTube and other platforms. And we'll do a lot of original content, but we'll also do a lot of branded content, which is our bread and butter.
Thank you. So when I think of getting that first deal, I always think it's the hardest. I mean, even I know for me, when I locked down my first branded deal that I was going to do an influencer marketing campaign for, I remember being like, how did that happen? And I think that is going to give a lot of perspective. So does anyone have an interesting story or a brand? Like, do you remember the first branded deal that you did?
Yeah, so the first thing we did, I was working as a waiter here in town at a place that I hated. It was a really fancy restaurant. I get really like shaky with low blood sugar and like drop shit. So it was a bad. It was, Seasons in the Park. Yeah, not heard this work through.
Did you work at the Bruce Walker shop?
I was there for a month. So I got the job, I hated it. I had a ton of student loans, I was trying to figure out what to do at a film school. I knew I didn't want to work on set, because I had a lot of friends who had gone straight to work on set, got jaded really quick. And there's this new site that recently popped up called Tongle, where you could pitch on branded content. And at the beginning, it was like kind of, there's one for Excedrin, and they were going to hire 10 filmmakers and give them $750 each, and the top person could win $25,000. So we were excited. We made a pitch video, and typically, at that time they get around 50 pitches in. Now you'll see more, anywhere from 100 to 200. So we got in, and we got financed there. We made it, and we thought it was hilarious, and we put it out, and we got like out of the 20 spots, maybe 15th. So we won like another $500. So I lost some money on the project. But since then, it started us with them and with MoFilm, and we've gone on to do, almost, I'd say like $1.5 million between these sites. And that's with a production company of essentially, 2.5 people.
Do you have any stories of your
I got my start on Vine doing the 6.5 second videos and very sort of just trying it out really. And we had a couple of successes and viral hits and on Vine. And then Disney came calling, and Disney actually contacted me through Twitter and said, we'd like you to come to California, and because I live in Stratford, Ontario, near Toronto. And they're like, want you to come to California, we're going to pay you this much money, and you're going to make some more of these Vines. And I thought, well, this is obviously a prank. There's no possible way that someone's paying me to do this.
What year was this in?
2013.
So is this, you would know, is this before or after Disney and Maker got together?
During.
Okay.
Yeah.
So then you might have been whispering in Disney's ear all about influencers and then
He's not going to take any credit. No credit to Nick.
I'll take credit for some of it.
Okay.
But yeah, so it was very weird. I think that's what the weirdest thing about being a content creator or an influencer is that when someone offers you to pay you to do stuff, you're like, well, I'm enjoying making it. Why would you want to pay me? And then you're like, shut up, just take the money. Then
You did?
I took the money. Yeah, I really did.
That's where we met you.
That is exactly, because it was roughly the same time as Combos, actually. It was the Social Media All-Stars event.
That's a good segue into our story, David.
Yeah.
Yeah, so David and I did a similar story. We did it's not actually that similar, but we did a show that got some attention. And I think Disney was our first one as well.
Yeah, I think, because they contacted through the channel, right?
That's right.
And then they were like, same thing as Brittlestar, or Stewart, as I prefer to call him.
Thank you, Mr. Milchard.
And yeah, they flew us down, and we couldn't believe that we were getting invited by the all-powerful Disney to come down there and do a social media.
Yeah, I guess it's a bit different from Tyler in the sense that we didn't really pitch anyone. We just kind of made some content. I kind of hate that word, content. We made a video.
Stories, art.
Yeah, we made a video. Hey, you want to buy some content? I got a whole warehouse full of content. We made a series of videos that got some good attention, and
They went viral, man.
Yeah,
They were a sensation.
and so that's how we kind of came. We kind of had an audience, and brands like audience. They like paying money so that they can have their brands, their logos of themselves in front of people, so that they can then trick those people into buying the product. Which is, that's how the world works. So, you can pitch them, or you kind of have them come to you.
A little different than these guys, actually. I had dabbled in trying to get into the 60-second spot in the music video space 4-ish years ago when I started Blueprint, and was kind of trying to find the footing in Los Angeles. Starting a video company of any kind is just a ridiculous endeavor, because both of my neighbors also ran a production company. So it was like, when you sit down and someone asks you, so what makes your company different from that guy's act? Everybody in this room would be just the 7 blocks around my apartment where I lived in Hollywood. What's that? Exactly the same. And so I dabbled in a few of these 60-second spots. I did a Tongle. My first decent budget was a Tongle spot, and some music videos. And it wasn't until a year later that, by accident, through a friend, I did this 3-4 minute short doc. It was a branded short doc, like a Vimeo doc. I don't know if anybody's familiar with that weird niche of branded content. And it ended up being something that I really liked doing, that felt different than sitting in the 25 to 50 to 70K 60-second scripted spots, which would be a cast and a short narrative film. So these short doc spots we started doing for a couple of reasons. The main one being is that they were client direct. So for anybody here that's a filmmaker and is trying to make more branded stuff and be shooting a lot more, shooting stuff that's client direct is a much more straightforward process typically than doing something that goes through an agency, big or small. It's just oftentimes a more intimate relationship if you can manage it. And since then we've done a number of these things, and that's kind of become the staple of what we do, and what I guess we've kind of become known for. The clients that we've worked with is just these really emotional, really personal, but the goal is to be as cinematic as possible in the way that they're shot, and the attention to detail, and everything from the sound mix to the color correcting and all that stuff.
I'll take a slightly different approach. So the question from mine is obviously on the other side, and I'll use these guys as an example. I think when you're trying to get some of those early brand deals, it can take a really long time. And on the other side of pitching it and talking to brands and inside of an organization like I was at Maker at the time, it took me 9 months, a year before we got a lot of traction on selling brands into the series. And it took a lot of education. I think one thing that I've learned is on the sales side, you really need to educate. Brands, they have a lot of them are, hey, we're brands, we've done this, this is not our first rodeo, we know how to make, and they in their heads are well, we know how to make content, we know how to make commercials, and you have to explain to them look, you have to really have that conversation with them about audience and kind of the idea that you're, as a brand, you're borrowing this creator's audience, and there's a right way to do it. If you have an emotion that you want to evoke, you want the audience to feel that way about your brand, you really need to talk to the creator and figure it out. So that took me aggressive, and this is the one I'll take credit for. That took me 9 months, a year before we got. I think we did a couple of one-offs, and then finally we, got really, I feel like we hit it, and we got a brand to come in to sponsor the run of the series, and they did that for 5 years. So there's a lot of, at least taking the other side of the table, there's a lot of pitching and kind of it takes a lot of educating to get there.
Did the sponsor that stayed on for 5 years, was that one of the brands that you did a one-off with? Or was it totally different?
No, they came in, the ones who Audible and and then yeah. Then there was a Disney, and there's a couple of one-offs that we did.
Okay.
We had sort of a format for that, but Geico came in and they were willing to sponsor the entire series.
Wow.
And the first year was a little rough, but we figured it out.
Yeah.
And so what was the requirements? Because I guess my biggest thing is how much branded content is like too much branded. Like what are you telling them that you can put into your series without it feeling like, okay, this is either a sellout-y feeling or it's too much? Because I even find that on my end. It's like, well, we need this call to action, we need this, and then we need, like, you know, just, and then it starts just feeling really, ugh.
I mean, I can tee this one up, and then you guys can kind of talk about I think, how it came into fruition. I think it's 50-50. You know, like some brands come in and they want to do 3 rounds of notes. They have a laundry list of things that need to be checked off. They want to edit. They want you know, like editorial, you know, like control of some stuff. And then other brands that get it can come in and they'll be very subtle. You know, like I think there's certain things, like obviously everybody wants to hit a call to action, but some brands may just say, oh, like I love a title card, and then I think something very subtle. You know, like I think with your show, by the time we were into it, we figured out a very creative, like funny ways that it became, and this is I think like the way I always pitch brands is like you tell a brand like you should try to be, you want to be a hero, and so if you can get out of the driver's seat and just be a passenger and let the creator who knows their audience and who knows how to interact with the audience, you can be a hero. You can sponsor the show. You can come in a way that is tasteful and doesn't piss off the audience. Because I mean, I think that's where brands get in their own way. Is they make something different, and the audience doesn't want that. They're like, you ruin content that I love.
Yeah.
I hate. But I think what we did with combo shows is it became like, you know, like the subtle like Geico things became part of like the DNA of the audience.
Okay, do you have something more?
Yeah, I think that the interesting thing about that was that it was already an existing kind of format. It was already an existing show, so there was expectation and there was kind of an understanding of an audience, which I think is actually very parallel to just any sort of creative, because their audience kind of gets to know them. So Geico, I think, was a very good. They seemed to kind of get it in the sense that they didn't really have a specific message that they were pushing, like a quarterly campaign that they were going after, which you do kind of you can encounter a lot. Where yeah, they're like, okay, we need to get this many impressions before March 31st to kind of hit our target. They were I think a really ideal partner in the sense that they were just looking for general awareness.
Well, the thing that sticks out to me is just tone. You know, you have the same tone, so it really is a good fit.
Yeah, they have a taste. You know, like their commercials are funnier than most stuff that I could ever do anyway. So it's kind of, you know, you're kind of swinging a bit above our weight.
Which I think is probably one of the hardest things to pitch to a brand is like, how do you explain, how do you pitch a vibe? You know, like this tone and this tone, they match, you know, and then it's, I mean, I always say like, when it comes to creating, say it's a campaign for Adidas versus Nike, 2 completely different brands, 2 completely different vibes. If I ask you who you like better, you tell me maybe I like X, you know, one of them better. And I ask you why, you might not know why, but again, it's this brand, this essence, this vibe, this tone, that each brand has a different essence to it. And I think it's really cool that with Geico and yourself, that you've been able, I think it, like in my brain, I go, okay, that's a really good fit. I wanted to move over to, you know, Ben, you said something where you're like, you know, there's other production companies and, you know, what sets us apart. I think one of the things that really I've been thinking about lately is how do you cut through all the clutter and go, say you were talking about directly to the brand, or, you know, go to work with an agency, you know, Stewart, like what is your best approach to meeting these people? Is it in person, coming to events like this? Is it going to, is it going to like VidCon? Is it going to, or is it going on LinkedIn and reaching out directly? Like, what is your best way to get somebody's attention?
I think there's a little bit of a business strategy in whoever it is that's the proprietor of the company and has the vision for it. You have to know what type of content you like and what your goal to make like that. I'd like to make the best version of that ever. That would be like my dream thing. So if that site is set and you just set out to make that thing because that interests you, the ultimate pocket that is going to be perfect for you, that's going to be successful for you, is like where that passion and your talent meets and makes that thing, because that's what's going to go viral or gain you the traction. And I think that I experienced a lot of challenge in doing, I guess what you could broadly call cold outreach for content. It's like it's a stupid endeavor. I wouldn't recommend anybody do cold outreach to get brands, unless you're going to something like VidCon, or even better is going to an industry con and just meeting people and being friendly. And I've actually met more people accidentally at conventions and film festivals and events that I've ended up working with a year and a half later just by proxy. But that all, I think in my business, that all comes from finding a specificity. Like about 2 years ago, when the work that we were doing just kind of dropped into the place that it felt really good to me, and I had kind of thought long and hard about when I go through the internet and I just sift through stuff, and I just ruthlessly was like, don't like. And I would figure out, I was like, okay, what is it that can keep my attention for 4 minutes? I want to make stuff that's not 60 seconds, and I don't want to do the series-focused stuff that is going to be long-term with brands. I want to make something that is a compelling thing that lives online that someone will watch through for 4 minutes because it's interesting, not because it's branded. And that, I think, finding that specificity for whatever it is that is your type of content. If it's comedy, if it's sketch comedy, if you want to be like the Brandon Key and Peele, like whatever that is, figure out how to make that thing, make it successfully, and then I think people just start snowballing.
You want to go down the line? Like, what's the best way that you found that you, David, that you can get brands' interest? Do you go to an agent? Do you even do that?
Well, I mean, I think, just to echo your point, I think you have to make something that you're passionate about, and something that's worth telling to you, and then obviously make it as good as you can, as best you can, and then hopefully people come, because I feel like we were very lucky, because people would just reach out to us. We would get emails about, we still do.
Okay, that's what I want to get at.
And that's because we made something and put something out. So, you know, if we don't continue to make different things, or you know, then that's never going to happen. We also managed to get connections with people like Nick, and those would also come out of similar things, going to a conference or whatever, and not necessarily getting a meeting, but literally, we've had the same response of like, oh, we met you briefly, and now we're having a conversation about doing something bigger. So, makes sense.
Yeah. I think.
Let's keep it all down here.
Yeah, just we're.
Yeah, keep going.
Bye. I think for anybody that is interested in making branded content, there's like an idea that you're going to self-create a brilliant Super Bowl quality ad campaign that will go viral. But I don't think the success of small content companies comes from that agenda. I think it literally just comes from finding something that is really just important to you and doing it really, really well, as best as you can. And if it's making people laugh, it's making people cry, just like go laser focused on that, because the big audience that you're looking for is going to come to the point of that focus, and that's where they're going to see who you are and like what differentiates you. And it sounds like that's what you guys did.
Well, let's bring it back to here. So Stewart, I want to know, you work with a lot of different companies and a lot of different agencies. Are you signed exclusively to any? I feel like you're really good at keeping relationships with a lot of brands and agencies.
I think, I mean, Ben's totally right. I think that, you know, you need to connect with people, because at the end of the day, or the bottom line is that people are dealing with each other. And if your job needs to have things run smoothly and you're dealing with someone who's creating something for you, you want to make sure those people can deliver. You want to make sure that they're not total dickheads, that they're nice people to work with, and they're actually going to deliver. So I think that goes a long way. So I think that what we've tried to do is maintain those relationships as best we can and try to work with people that we actually like, and that makes a huge difference. And I think also what's interesting is, you know, from my perspective as a social media content creator, is that I'm just creating content all the time anyway. And that's kind of sort of solidifying my brand. So when brands contact us, and the vast majority of jobs we get are because brands come to us saying, hey, listen, we saw your stuff, we'd like you to do something for us. It's because they see me and say, well, you're the kind of person who would use our product or service, so this kind of makes sense, you should do it. If you don't have that kind of nice relationship with the brand, when you're creating, you know, video content for people, it just doesn't sell, it doesn't work. I have this sort of mantra, which is entertain first and sell second. And as long as you do that, you're fine. And it doesn't matter if you're selling a brand or if you're selling your own brand or whatever it is, you can always sell something, but you have to entertain people first, because everyone only has limited amounts of time, and you've got to just deliver the punch right away. And I think that's so important.
So, I mean, pretty much all of you are still going up against, you know, there's these big agencies and they are getting these, you know, full, you know, service. They're becoming like the agency on record. How do you compete against that? Anyone? Like even like production companies, like how are you going in and saying like, yeah, you know, this huge company like Ogilvy or Sidley or whatever, they're doing this and they've got like this great big team. How are you competing?
Pretty basically, I just try and do what they're not doing, and just keep an eye on what people are doing at what budget range, which is also important because that's where the identifiable product comes in, is like what content is being created at what budget. So if you can do something at a more conservative budget than the agencies, then you have an advantage. But also, if there's just stuff that they're not doing, like a lot of these docs that we do require a small team, and the only way to do it is to do it with a 5-person crew. And if you go watch documentary content from big companies and big agencies, with the exception of the really elite, great production companies and agencies, you see a lot of bad, non-emotive content. So that's where I've just tried to think is what are people not doing, and then how to do that.
Yeah, on that, I think that a lot of these big companies that are creating stuff have like a lot of people making decisions, which just kind of breeds a certain type of content and loses a specificity in voice. So when you're a smaller creator and you're the one that's making the decision, or you in a very small team, you have an advantage that you can kind of have a more specific voice. You can be maybe a bit more edgy or a bit more outside of the box, or something that is a bit louder, you know, which is why I think you get the sort of the great beige of content, because that is, you know, that can be mass media because it's created by kind of committee. So I think if as an independent creator that can move quickly and can move and do things without a lot of permission, you can do things that are kind of more interesting and maybe a bit more provocative, and can kind of get seen, and kind of carve out a niche, which is kind of, I think, your way of getting into those cracks of what other people aren't doing.
I was just gonna say, I think there's a downside to that, and that the challenges we have is when we go into budget out a campaign or something, they sort of look at a social media creator and go, oh well, I mean, what do you need? It's gonna take you about a day and a half, right? So I don't know, $800, that'd do you? That'd be fun. We did a campaign for a chain restaurant that did super, super well, and I had to talk them up to as high as they'd go in their budget, which was still dirt cheap. It ended up being the biggest branded video in the world last year, and they came back and said, we want you to do another one for a Christmas campaign. I was like, all right, they're gonna finally pay me. Yeah. They offered me a fifth the price to do. They're like, well, you could just do the same thing, right? I was like, no, I can't. So there's that element, I think, with...
Why would they offer a fifth of the price? Wouldn't they offer more? It's so confusing.
You have to sell a lot of $5 snack packs, I guess, to... I don't know. I don't know what it is. So, I mean, luckily the kids wanted PS4s, so we did it, because I have no shame. But yeah, I think that's the biggest hassle I have, is convincing people. It's like, yes, we are independent producers. However, it still takes time, people, and effort and energy to make stuff. So
do you have like a deck or a one sheet that you send them to try to make it as, you know, it's almost like they're so, I guess, old school in a way. So it's like, here are what our conversions are. Like, do you have it outlined for them to just kind of be like, this is my value?
Yeah, and we do actually have a one sheet. We have one sheets for like each of us who do the content, and but I think at the same time, there's still that element. Once you get past the really smart person in the department, marketing department or agency or whatever, you get up to the higher up and they go, yeah, but it's just a guy on his phone, isn't it? And it's like, well, sometimes that does really work well if it's just a guy on his phone. That could be the perfect choice of medium to convey the message you want and the emotion and the authenticity of it. But there's other times where you're like, this is a shoot. This is like a 3-day shoot. And we can't we can't do it like that.
That's what I try to explain to a lot of brands. It's like, they go, why is it so expensive? I'm like, I don't know, maybe because you're not paying for a commercial. You're paying a person who already has your marketing dollars embedded, and they're doing the shoot themselves. And then you have that unknown, or that element of love and trust in there, of course.
I mean, I think that's right on the money. I think what a lot of brands don't understand is that they're partnering with a creator to create content, but also they're borrowing their distribution. Like, you know, like the audience is essentially like distribution, and it's also very expensive to make commercials. So, I think that's one of the hardest things that, you know, like creators or up against is explaining to them, like, yeah, I know you make commercials and you think you're doing this well, but if you reaching the audience that you wanted to reach, we wouldn't be having this conversation. I think that's, at the end of the day, more and more brands are finding it difficult to get to who they want to get to and to have a meaningful relationship with them. And I think it kind of goes back to what I had said earlier about the smart brands get it, that that if we could do this better, we would. Commercials before, so, and the way that people consume content has changed. The way that people consume has changed drastically. So, and it's constantly, like, you know, platforms are constantly evolving. People need to adapt, you know, like the brands that want to reach those audiences have to stay with that.
Well, actually, that leads me into my next question I had for you, which was, how have you seen branded content change over the years? Because you've seen, I'm sure, and we haven't really gotten into a one-on-one conversation, but just reading your bio, I was like, oh, you've been there since the beginning with a lot of the like YouTube OGs, and you've seen essentially the industry evolve from its very infancy. So what are some of the biggest changes you've seen?
I like that number starting. That's good. Well, I think, you know, people have gotten, one big one is that no one is sneaking brand deals by anymore. Like, you know, when I think back to some of like the early days at Maker, it was certainly like, oh, okay, like we would set it up in a way where it's like, oh, this isn't branded. And now, like, you look at that, and it was just kind of, you know, like they were pushing the product. Natural, especially if I was working with like a vlogger.
Yeah, because remember, it was like kind of an icky thing. Do you remember that time where they were like,
yeah,
we don't want to show people that we're working with brands?
Yeah,
which
I worked with a family vlogger, and that was like our go-to. It was, we didn't see anything wrong with it. It was like, oh, like we're just gonna do this and make it feel like it's part of their natural life, and the brand would want that. They would say like, well, just do it, make it feel. Oh, you know, like we're. It's not planted. It's just you come home and you're playing with a toy, stuff like that. And then we would do more produced stuff elsewhere. That was our go-to. Obviously now, FTC has changed that drastically, and that would never fly. So I think that's one of the biggest changes. That's not like a super exciting. That's, I think, one of the biggest, that had the biggest impact. Because then all of a sudden, like, the FTC disclosures got, you know, like more and more. That also had a kind of ripple effect in worked as like very.
Yeah, that's
how you've dealt with stuff like that.
exactly. I was going to say, do you ever get nervous before integrating a brand into your content because you just don't know how your audience is going to react?
Yeah, we do. Depending on the brand and what they want. I mean, Geico was a good example because they rarely, I think maybe in the 5 years, they maybe had 1 or 2 notes for us on how they wanted things kind of positioned. So we could kind of do whatever we wanted. And we knew that we had to be respectful, but it was that the tone of the show was that anyways. We've worked with other brands that there's often a conversation that happens at the beginning of working with a brand where they say, we just want it to exist in we love what you do. We want it to be organic to what you do. We don't want it to be heavy-handed. We don't want it to be overly branded. We just want it to really sit nicely. And you go, oh, that's great, okay. And then you start working with them, and then when you start getting to the editing stages, they say, we would like just a product shot for 5 seconds, and if you could show the logo 7 times. And you're like, this is the opposite of the conversation we had 4 weeks ago. And they go, yeah, we know. But this is where it's at. The CMO started to weigh in. So, and that's when you start getting tricky, because you know that as soon as stuff feels like Stewart was saying, entertain first, brand sell second. As soon as you start feeling that kind of that shift going, you're like, it's dead. It's gonna, it starts to. When I watch stuff like that, and I feel I'm being sold. You kind of. I don't engage with it.
I think I always think. Sorry to interrupt. I sort of feel like you were getting kind of boring.
I know.
I feel that I always think that when you tip the scales, like Matt said, and you've got that sell thing coming up higher than the entertain thing, your audience is like, well, I'm not going to share this, or I'm not going to like it, because it feels like I'm doing something for free, like I'm working for the company. So yeah, I think that makes a huge difference in that regard, for sure, absolutely. So saying, it's hard when you're the person who's the face of the content and creating the content, because going back to the Disney story, amazing campaign, they're really lovely to us, they're really great, and then nothing happened for a month, and we were like, oh God, that's it, maybe that's all we're gonna get. And then this dating site came up, and this dating site was like, would you like to do some videos for us? And I was like, yes, I guess so. It doesn't make any sense for me whatsoever. I don't know why you'd want a middle-aged married dad to do a dating site. That seems creepy. And then they hired my son, who was 11, to do 2 dating site ads as well, which was even weirder. But we were like, this is crazy.
What?
So
what was the dating site?
Badoo, a European dating site, to make it even
European.
worse.
Okay, I get it.
Yeah. Well, European, that's just it's the way they do it in the continent.
This is how they do it, yeah.
But at the time, though, as the face of the content, you're like, I don't know, is it like, why was anyone paying me in the first place? Okay, we'll take this money. But then you kind of have to get to a point where you're creating the content and going, okay, this doesn't make any sense in the long term. I can't see a long-term relationship happening here. The very last campaign I did for them, I was like, I'm not doing any more. We were at our cottage, and the email came in and said, listen, we'd like you to do a campaign today. If you can do something for us, we'll pay you as soon as you submit the video. And I looked out at our boat with no motor, and I thought, okay, I'll do it. And so I did a video where I had, it was me up in the forest, and I looked at my phone, opened up the app, and it said like hot friends nearby. And I'd replaced all the profile pictures with woodland creatures, like squirrels and stuff like that, and deer and stuff. And I said, oh, that squirrel looks kind of hot. And that was the end of the video. And it was their best performing video. It was like 22 million views on that video. Wow. Yeah, it was.
Vine, or what was
that was back on Vine days. Yeah, crazy, nuts.
So you did. I'm just going to summarize it. You did, as a married man, you did a dating video. Your 11-year-old son did a dating video, and you did a dating video about you finding animals attractive.
I thought that fit my brand. That really fit my brand.
Good brand fit.
Yeah. Bad father, bestiality. Yeah.
This just goes to show that niche is really the future.
Yeah, well, I thought maybe this is our new market. Yeah, exactly.
Do you have any hard lines of what you wanted to do?
I have a saying that pride is expensive, and as long as you can afford pride, it's okay. But I do have lines like I won't do anything religious. I won't do any smoking. I won't do any drug stuff. I'm hesitant to do alcohol stuff, but I'm usually okay. I did like something for the Travel Channel that was whatever his name is. He does the booze show, and it's more of like a travel fun show, so it was okay. Yeah.
I'm going to open it up to the audience to ask some questions, but before that, I just have to ask everybody, what would your dream brand be to work with? We can go down the line from Ben.
Are there any brand representatives in the audience?
What is your brand?
Yeah.
Okay, we can be honest.
Maybe North Face or SpaceX. I don't know. Something cool, outdoors, exciting.
Yeah, I'd probably REI, MEC would be pretty fun to do because I like outdoor stuff.
I mean, mine is I think a little bit different, but I mean, I like working with Nike.
Really?
Thanks, Danny. Yeah, I mean, I think I'm much more concerned with like, are they a pain in the ass to work with?
Yeah.
I'll take his.
Yeah.
No.
Just one that you've like thought, oh, that would be such a good brand to work with for our series, or I don't know. It just if that ever came to your mind. Plus, if this is getting filmed and ends up on the interwebs, you never know.
REI, MEC.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think for me it'd be like Beast Mode, which is Marshawn Lynch's store. That's just like in Seattle and in Oakland, and just something small, boutique that you could do something really cool with.
We drive a 2009 Ford Flex and it's falling apart, so I'll say any car manufacturer whatsoever. Which camera is it? That one? Any car manufacturer whatsoever.
There you have it. All right, guys. Well, thank you so much. I'll give you a round of applause. That was awesome. Thank you. So does anybody have any questions? Yes, gentlemen.
So you all sort of talk.
I think it would depend. There's so many variables. I think it would depend on the type of content that you're creating. Oh, personally, for us, we.
It was about six months. I think, yeah.
Yeah, I started in February. In August, I got the Disney deal, so 7 months.
Year.
We're winning.
Yeah, I mean, we're just always pitching, right? Like we started a full company, a month in, and we saw we can make money that. We're very much, I think we're a little different than these guys, where we don't always get to choose what kind of stuff we want to do. Our favorite stuff is more kind of the stuff Ben does, like this Vimeo-style documentary, and we've done those, but they've just bombed on Tongle.
I actually have a question for you, Tyler. Like, what is it that like, because like what you're doing is really unique and great, and like you're successful at it. Because like to do Tongle and go up there and compete against all these other creative people, like what motivates you to go after a certain brand and get their business, and also like what do you think? I mean, it's a hard question to answer, but what do you think makes a brand say yes to your ideas?
I think, so yeah, the two parts. The reason we do it is we run two parts. Our company does this stuff, our passion projects that we really want to do, like shows like White Ninja, like our animated series. And then we also do the branded stuff because it pays well and it's fun to do. It's short shoots. You can have a life, you can have a family, but you're not like working on sets for crazy days. So that's how we balance it. And I love the different worlds you got to jump in, especially with the documentary ones, like the people we've met and the stories we've told. That's really exciting. How we've made it on Tongle. I mean, so Tongle, MoFilm, Zupa, there was like a heyday of the crowdsourcing world where companies were putting in so much money. Like we got flown to Miami for this one party with the producer of Titanic. I should remember his name. No, the other. Anyways, he had his Oscar. Like it was crazy. Like the celebrities they were bringing out, The parties, we were staying in hotel rooms that were $700 a night that were like, we live off this. It was this crazy world that exploded when people got really excited about user-generated content. So this is when Doritos was starting Crash the Super Bowl. There's this massive wave of it. Now we're on the pro side of most of these sites, and they've changed dramatically. So there used to be a lot more of them buying a ton of content, putting money out, seeing what would work. Now they're shifting more to like, no, we're gonna spend $50,000 to make one piece of content instead of hiring 5 content creators to split up the prize pool of money. And that worked really well for us, the prize pool of money model, because we'd usually hit really high. And then it's great. If you made it for $1,000 and you win 20 grand, that's just profit to split on your team. Whereas like the 50,000 budget's funny because suddenly then you're just paying everyone more from the get-go, which is good, but you also just naturally scale up because you have the money, so you end up spending it. You shoot on an Alexa. Like all this stuff just happens to be part of the pitch. I don't know if that answers the question.
On the Tongle MoFilm side of things, I've kind of had a different experience with those sites because I've felt that, and I haven't done them in a few years, so I don't know if they've evolved, but I think that there are so many really, really talented filmmakers out there, and if you're not familiar with what these sites are, that you basically auction off creative, and then that creative is selected, and then you auction off producers to produce that creative. So the idea is that you're taking the agency out, and you have this kind of proxy company, Tongle, MoFilm, whatever the other ones are, but the budgets are low, and it seems to me that it's not a method of employing filmmakers for their actual value. I think that there's a lot left on the floor when you have 200 people spending 3 or 4 days each writing a treatment to submit to this auction house for content, and 199 of those are left on the floor. I mean, those are like people like each of us that are spending this huge amount of time for this like shot to make this thing. And I did that, and I wrote probably 25 of those treatments at one point in time. And I'm not bitter about it at all, because it was also my start. So it's like a peculiar thing. But for someone starting out and getting into that, asking that question, how am I going to work with a brand? How am I going to get $25K to shoot something so I can do it the way that I want to? It seems like there's a missing piece in how you can communicate, because you look at these sites and you're like, this is the only way that I can do it. And the only way to do this is to just submit. And then before you know it, you've spent 300 hours writing treatments. When if you just went and found a boutique production company and you said, hey, let me direct your next video. I'll do it for $1,000, end to end. Just let me see what I can do. You might be there quicker.
Yeah, and I completely agree with that. I think the one benefit of the sites would be if you work in a rural place. Like I've been repped on and off in LA, but it's hard to continue it if you're up here. And the companies that rep directors here tend to be more service production anyways, and their big directors are still in LA. So that's the value. But I completely agree. It's not a sustainable model. There's very few people that are able to do what we do and make a living off of it. Like I know a handful of guys that do that. And it's amazing if you can make it work. But it's super, super competitive, and yeah, it's a lot of time. In
a lot of ways, it's just like being an agency rep director. You're bidding. It's like agencies bid out, they get sifted through, and then they end up with a 10 to 20 company bid. So it's a similar thing.
Yeah, for less money.
For a lot less money.
Any other questions? Yes.
Hi guys. I have an unscripted. Talking to me about, is there a way to show my
I've got a little bit. We actually did a show recently for the Property Brothers guys, the Drew and Jonathan Scott have a platform called Guru Hub. And we did a pilot for a show called Who's Coming to Dinner? And they ended up changing it to What's for Dinner, which sucked, but that's okay. I'm not bitter about that at all. Anyway, but it's basically a dinner party talk show. So we've been trying to sort of secure bigger brand sponsors that are interested in the US market with some Canadian coverage as well. And it's really difficult to sort of present that, because even when you've got it in the can and it's kind of finished, you've got a proof of concept. We found the best way is to sort of try to get it to individuals as opposed to cold calling or going to the front door or trying to, because you're jeopardizing someone's job, if you show up with a great idea. So you kind of have to, we found our best tactic, to be absolutely honest, our best tactic so far is to go through the social media teams to find out who should we contact. Send it to those people who are running the Twitter accounts and say, hey, I'm looking to see if you guys would be interested. Who should I talk to? Here's the link. Have a look at it. And those people are usually keen. They kind of get it. They know the value of that kind of stuff, and they move over. But I've been amazed at the sponsorship money that's available is phenomenal. Like, it's just, you could easily fund a show, I would think.
On that note, a big question as a producer to ask is how much money you need, because that totally influences who you would go to and how you would approach them. Like, if you're looking to make 10 episodes, like your second season of your show, assume you've already made it. You've already made a couple episodes. So if you're looking to make like a second season and you need $5,000 to make that, totally different than $100,000. Because $5,000, you could go to any company in Vancouver in your industry that has 100 employees, and they would probably sponsor the show. $100,000, you'd need a company and it's going to go through the whole process. So.
Nick, how do you, because I mean that's kind of what you do in a lot of ways in the sense of selling for channels, which are essentially kind of ongoing shows like YouTube creators. I'm assuming there's, if you've done a first season, you're going to have analytics on that. So compiling all of that data becomes a sales tool, and that's kind of what you guys do, right?
Yeah, so that's one of the things that we do. I think, yes, if you have something that's already built out and you have metrics and data from it, put together a one sheet, I think it's much easier. It's much easier to sell into something that's not yet made, in my experience with brands, because they want to have some more editorial input and some less, but they do want to, it's very difficult to go out with something that's already shot in the can and then say all right, we're just going to put like a card in front of it or whatever. There are ways to cheat it and shoot like ancillary content that will go in. You can get creative with that, but for the most part, when I've worked with brands, it's like, this is a show. They're looking at a second season. This is the data. Here's a one sheet. Here's a handful of quick two-liner synopsis for different episodes. A couple of integration examples or potential examples of how the product would be featured. I also, one of the things that we have done from a talent strategy perspective is to build a social narrative. So I wouldn't just go with, hey, we'd love for you to be a sponsor on the show. Here's a couple of here's some treatments. How we're going to bolster it with social. These are the kind of things that we're going to do, and in some instances have even built out a production schedule. That's it's a calendar, and it's all right, well, we're going to utilize Instagram stories on this day. We're going to utilize Twitter here and Facebook here. And then you kind of paint that picture. That would be, again, for probably that bigger budget. You think you need to do that for a smaller, if it's a smaller sponsorship, but that's the kind of collateral, and often it's actually brands are talking to us about, hey, we're looking to do X, Y, and Z. What do you have?
Most companies, you can email somebody a really short email and intrigue them enough to start a relationship. I think the idea that big companies you can't reach because they're big is not a thing. Figure out what their LinkedIn name is, figure out what the company is, and send them an email to each conceivable m.peterson@nike.com or whatever it is. Yeah.
Hello.
a lot of brands are going to want to back into numbers. And they may have a CPV, a cost per view, that they're going to back into. And that is, you know, like that's a great way if you're looking to like, well, how should I price my content? You know, like you can kind of work from a CPV, and that could be anywhere depending on the brand. You know, like we used to see 10-cent CPVs. There's less of that now. It's probably a lot of, you know, a lot of brands want to be at a 6-cent or a 7-cent CPV. Some 5, and then in the gaming industry it can be even lower because. But that's a great way to kind of, you know, to figure out like, all right, like, well, how should I be pricing myself? And that's a lot of brands back into that. You know, I think I have never been a huge fan of backing into a number, because then you say like everything is, you really there's gotta be, I don't know what the better word is.
Better word for it.
Moist content. Is that better?
That's obviously better. But I don't believe that all content is created equal. And I think when you know, a lot of the industry does tend to back into a standard CPV, it kind of puts everybody like on the same playing field, and that's, I don't know. I fought that for years, but it's getting harder and harder.
But doesn't it depend on like who you're talking to to get the money, and who the brand is? Because then, like, it all depends on what they might be looking for. You know, certain funding bodies are going to want certain things, and then certain brands are going to want certain things. And you know, again, subscribe to Brittlestar's mantra: entertain first, sell later. And if everyone was thinking that way, including funding bodies and including the brands, I think you're going to get better stories, better content, and everyone's going to get what they want in the end anyways. But somehow that's kind of flipped a lot. It's, well, how many views are we going to get, and how much, you know, we're paying you this much and we're only going to get this, but well, wait a minute, there's something called engagement and people talking about something that's cool. Is that, you know?
Yeah, I think it was really just almost like a start.
Yeah, there's not,
all of the variables, so
there's not really rates yet. It's still a bit Wild West, you know, so it's a bit like what you can negotiate, you know, how good your sales pitch is, you know, little, you know, just how good you can do it. I found, you know, being aware of where you're at where they're at in their yearly spend. Usually at the end of the year, like end of like November, December, you can usually get more money out of them because they have certain targets they need to hit. But it's just kind of, yeah, just kind of like, that's like the businessy side of thing. Usually, you know, if you can think of a number that you think is absurd and double it, and then if they say yes, then you've underbid. That's like the best way.
I think we have time for one question because Stewart, Tyler, and I are supposed to be on stage somewhere else right now. One more question, or if you do it really fast with you two. Yeah.
You talked about having access the brand.
Maybe. I mean, I think it depends. Then you're not pitching your audience, you know. Then you're probably pitching them to maybe make some content for them that they can use in different ways.
Yeah, I think when you get to that point where someone's, you got the person who knows you make good content and they believe in your content, but then to convince their boss to do it, they have to give them hard evidence and say, well, look, they've got this many followers or this many views or whatever. That makes it easier for them and more quantifiable and justifiable for the person above that to go, okay, well then if it sucks and doesn't work, at least I can point back to that and go, yeah, but look, you know, they had all those numbers. So I think that's...
Well, like, I guess, like, Tyler, you're not creating content with like a built-in audience, right?
No. Yeah, like, so like White Ninja, we thought, like, because we hit, you know, I think in a month or two we were at around 70,000 followers, 30 million views, and we're like, you know, maybe we get a brand there. And then Vine died. So like maybe if that kept on, we could have came. But again, it had to entertain first, right? Like it had to be really funny. It had to, you know, we played in South by Southwest, and we thought maybe we'd find a sponsor there. So I think like those places are great, because that's where the brands are at. Like South by Southwest is amazing for the brand presence and the conversations you can have there. Like there's a production company I've pitched a few shows with now that we like literally met in line at the Ludacris concert. You know, like, but that's not gonna happen at other places, right? Like, but it'll happen there.
I will say, I just had a meeting with Mercedes, and they told me that their strategy going forward is they just want to work with really good photographers because they know that they have the content and they can put money behind their Instagram pictures or, you know, whatever. So I would say in the last 6 months, the things I've been asking for more is they're looking at the aesthetic of it's not even, oh, look at how famous or the celebrity factor that this person has. It's, okay, but do we have a polished piece of content that really looks good and reflects us well? So I would say I would say good quality pictures and videos is great. is you need to focus on.
Back to the specificity. More and more people are going to hire you for specifically what you can do. And like the stuff that we do is in no way built around audiences. It's built around what the brand is looking for in their global scheme of their marketing. And we come in and we do it in a really, really specific way. And that's it. And that's all we do. And so, yeah, sorry, go ahead. Question?
I was just going to say last question.
The last one.
So wherever you...
Last question.
Did you have a good last?
Sometimes you don't even know. I mean, I don't even know when we're competing against people. Or who. I didn't want to do the Kendall Jenner Pepsi commercial.
To be honest, I try not to focus on that much because I think as competitive as it is for all of us pitching all the time, like literally your job, or at least my job, is getting no's constantly and feeling good about that and keeping forward. So I try and just forget about every single project and move on to the next one.
All right. You want to end it on that? Yeah. Positive note? Okay. All right. Thank you, guys.
Thanks.